This is the all-new Peugeot e-308, the manufacturer's first attempt at going up against the likes of the Volkswagen ID3 and, yeah, that old chestnut, the MG4. But this car has a few tricks up its sleeve, not least in the design segment, where I think we can all agree it looks excellent. But I'll tell you something, the interior ain't too shabby either. So let's see if this thing can take on those rivals.
With a starting price of £42,250, Peugeot's e-308 is going to need a lot more than good looks to keep up with the competition. Things look alright on paper, with a 156 horsepower electric motor and a compact 54 kWh battery helping the e-308 to a claimed 257 miles between charges. However, that's almost 70 fewer than the MG4 extended range can manage, and that car costs £6,000 less. So brand loyalty aside, why would anyone choose the Peugeot?
Well, immediately it's clear behind the wheel of this e-308 that it does things differently to its two key rivals. The Volkswagen ID3 is the car that Peugeot announces as its key arch rival, and I think it has to say that because if it mentions the old elephant in the room, which has been around now for over a year, the MG4, then it has to acknowledge that the price difference is pretty massive. The MG4 starts at 26,000 and something pounds, and this starts over 40 grand. It's closer to the ID3, and the ID3 does start in the mid-30s. So this is more expensive than even that, but it does feel nicer. I'll say it straight off the bat. The interior of this is just a much nicer place to be than the Volkswagen ID3. The way I sit in the seat and the way I'm surrounded by the interior, rather than feeling like I'm in this kind of like open air place like the ID3 is, I think this is going to appeal a lot more to people who are making the switch from petrol to electric. And this category is going to be full of them for the next few years. It just feels like a Peugeot. So we've got a nice new iCockpit display around me, all of the infrastructure set around me here, kind of cocoons me into the driver's seat, and it feels a little bit sporty as a result. And I do like it. Well, I have to admit, I'm still not super happy about having to have the steering wheel lower than I would ideally like it so that I can see the graphics on the instrument cluster ahead. Accepting that and actually just setting this small and quite nice to hold wheel lower, I do enjoy all of the graphics around me. It's a really high-tech experience, not least because the instrument cluster has layers of graphics on the screen, so it's kind of 3D. That definitely sets it apart from the MG4 and definitely helps this cabin to feel much more premium and much more higher rank than the cabin of the MG4. Yes, even when you spec up the MG4, you don't get over 40k, and yes, you get a lot more bits on it. The MG4 X-Power, which we've driven on track, that of course has a really long list of equipment, but this just feels nicer. It looks nicer as well. As for the way it drives, well, it feels comparable, more comparable to the ID3 in the sense that it's not particularly quick. They both kind of get down a road with that natural, quite linear delivery of electric power. If you put your foot down in sport mode, as I am now, you definitely get up and go, but there's none of that kind of shove you in the back feeling you get in the MG. Even lower rank versions of the MG have an initial quite big kick up the backside when you get going, whereas this is a much smoother power delivery. It rides pretty well too. I can sense that the wheels are quite heavy on this car. It's got 18s on this particular one, this GT model, and there are moments when it pitter-patters over bumps and cracks and you really feel the wheels thudding into them, but it doesn't really result in a shock through the car itself. You are quite cushioned from those impacts. You're just aware that they're happening. If I tread onto a cat's eye, there are thuds, and yeah, okay, it does come through the floor of the car, but it's doing a pretty good job of soaking up the bumps.
This decent ride is in no small part helped by the e-308's use of a smaller than normal battery, ensuring it weighs as much as 100 kilograms less than rivals at 1,684 kg. This provides the car with tangible dynamic benefits too, with a quick reacting front end and nice composure through the bends.
But because you don't have that really big surge of acceleration when you go around a bend, I couldn't ever say that this thing feels like a hot hatch. It's a warm hatch. Let's see what it's like if I just slow down, let the traffic ahead get away. Now let's go. There's absolutely no one behind me, so we might as well do a launch, shall we? Right, so here we are. We're in sport, foot to the floor. That's pretty steady, and it sort of picks up and goes once you're moving. So we're actually only just over 50 now. So it's pretty smooth on the acceleration measure, but feels refined, feels quiet. There's no powertrain noise whatsoever, no whines, nothing coming through the speakers. I can't even hear the noises it's playing outside, which shows you how well insulated this cabin is. And the road noise as well, despite those tires and the wheels being fairly large, it's good. Definitely a comfortable, premium feeling place. And I think that's crucial given the sticker price of this thing. Oh, and by the way, we know Peugeots pretty well because we have our lap time challenge e-308. And if you want to see more of that car on track with celebrities behind the wheel, click the link up here now. Let's click it down into normal mode. We're now into a bit of a built up area. So let's just see how it goes being driven normally. Still very quiet. Very, very refined. If I press the B mode here, I've got it set with the most braking performance, the most regen that can be put back into the battery, but actually it's not that aggressive. If I'm off the accelerator here, I'm sort of decelerating very slowly, so you're probably still gonna have to use the brakes a little bit more. And there are no paddles, for example, on the back of the wheel, so you can increase or decrease that regen on the move. How about eco mode? We'll click it back into eco mode. Immediately my claimed mileage has gone up by a few. We've gained 5, up from 114 miles at 54% battery to 119 miles by clicking eco mode. But all that is to do with the fact that the accelerator pedal has now become really slow in reaction. So I don't think anything has really changed in the chemistry or anything mechanical, of course. It's just encouraging you to drive more slowly because the pedal's gone long. I'll put it back into normal.
As for charging, the e-308 can make use of 100 kilowatt rapid plugs, allowing you to take the battery from 20 to 80% in 28 minutes. When it comes to overnight stuff, the onboard 11 kilowatt charger means a domestic wall box needs just over 7 hours to charge the car to full. It's efficient on the move too, averaging 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour during our drive, which is impressive.
Should we see what it's like through a bend? Here we go, we're back out on the open road. Definitely has very low body roll, this car, because the weight's all on the floor. It's a wet day today, but let's give it some load. Yeah, corners quite nicely. There's no steering feel, but you don't get that in most electric hatchbacks these days anyway. It's just reactive and keen and rides all right. Let's see what this turning circle is like. We're gonna do a U-turn just off the road here. That's pretty good, actually. That's really good. That's really, really good. So urban drivers, turning circle is very good. I can also tell you that the reversing camera is the same reversing camera you get on higher grade Peugeots, including the 508. So it's really sharp and you've got nice, clear graphics. It's very easy to place the car when you're reversing it. Now this thing wears Peugeot's latest design language very well indeed. At the front, it looks really sharp and angular, and even the body silhouette is quite nicely styled. I think it looks great with these wheels, these 18-inch alloys. The rear of the car is really cool as well. I love the details in the lighting. If you look up close, you can see the 3D texture and the way the light wraps around these parts. It looks amazing. And do you know what? The inside's not too bad either. See what I mean? It's really, really nice in here. It should be, of course, for 40 grand, but it does feel a step above those key rivals, not least because of the mix of materials. You've got softer touch plastics in nice places here, places that are easy to reach, and then you've got this satin finish on other parts, so it feels a bit more premium, and you've got some suede as well. And yes, you've got a lot of the familiar Peugeot iCockpit stuff in here, but it's the latest generation stuff, so that means you've got these 3D graphics ahead of you and a really fast and reactive infotainment screen here. It's nice and wide and slim, and you've got these shortcut buttons here, and then you actually have physical buttons below as well, so it's a good mix of tech and functionality. Small steering wheel ahead of me here, all just feels very Peugeot. And I do think if I was in this segment and I wasn't so focused on the money, because obviously if I was, the MG4 would be very hard to beat, this Peugeot would probably get my vote, genuinely just because of this interior and the looks. Now in the back, it definitely doesn't feel as big as the ID3, so if it's space you want in your electric hatchback, that Volkswagen definitely has an advantage, and it's all because of knee and feet room for passengers here. So I've got all right knee room, to be fair, but my feet are actually squashed a bit to get under the seat ahead of me. Yes, it's as low as it can go because that's how I like it, but I know that ID3 offers a little bit more room. Although I'm comfortable and the materials on the seat remain really nice down here, and you've got a couple of USB-C ports here to go with your pair of vents as well. Let's try the middle seat. Now, key thing is, because the 308 isn't just an electric model like it is when it comes to the MG4 or the ID3 from Volkswagen, you do have a tunnel down here. So while it's not in use in this particular car, it would be in use in other models with petrol engines. So it means I can't get my feet into the middle here and they're pushed apart. And of course, the middle seat as well just isn't that wide. So this is definitely a classic case of a four-seater that's relatively comfortable, but you're going to be pulling the short straw if you're in the middle. That being said, there is room above me on my head here, so while I'm sat higher, I'm not actually too crushed up. So if you've got a family and you've got kids, they should be all right in the back. As for the boot, firstly, I like the fact that they've hidden the button to open it in this bit here, because when they hide it down here, it gets really dirty, and keeping it up here means the design is clean. And then when it comes to boot space, this isn't the biggest boot in the class, far from it, but importantly, you do have a space to hide your cables. They can go under here, just in front of where the battery ends. So that keeps your boot nice and free for luggage or shopping, etc. There is a bit of a drop down here. So, I mean, in some cases that's great because it stops stuff rolling up against the boot lid. But for those of us loading heavy items in, that might not be ideal. But the space is usable. And you've also got an elastic storage bit here, and it's a manual boot, old school. All right, so I'll admit, I wanted this car to be good, and I'm glad that it actually is. All right, it's not quite the best in several ways, but it does enough, I think, to stand out from its two arch rivals. The Volkswagen ID3 is a sensible car, but it's a bit boring. This is definitely not boring. It's actually quite interesting and very exciting to sit behind the wheel, just because of the way it looks and therefore the way it makes you feel. Definitely not genuinely exciting in the driving sense though. I think it's just enjoyable. It rides nicely. It's not ridiculously quick in any way. It's just smooth. The MG4 definitely wins that game. But I think Peugeot have done a very good job in allowing this car to stand apart from its rivals. So people who want this car probably won't want those cars. Is that a conclusion? I don't know. It feels like one. Either way, what do you think of it? I think this is the best design hatchback out there in this segment. Bold statement. Let me know if you disagree in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like button and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we'd like to see you again for more reviews like this.